You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast from thefilmmagazine.com, where we talk about topics in film history, theory, and criticism through discussion and film reviews. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who didn't appear in silhouette.
I'm Sam. I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that knows that most of this episode is going to be us frantically looking up stuff that we half remembered. Like from our university days, go, oh, what was that one? Hang on, give me a second to go, that was it. So that's going to be most of this episode because we are unfiltered and uneducated.
Well, even from my movie plot, I'm going to be doing that, so it's fine. Yeah, well, we're talking about animation, specifically groundbreaking animation is what we decided to go with. Now, the ways in which these things are groundbreaking are going to vary a little bit. I'm very excited for Sam's, but...
which is a trip.
Yeah, but before we get into that, though, guys, I think we have some supporter questions. So, Sam, what do we have?
Yeah, give the questions from your friends and friends of the show, because I don't have any friends or friends of the show, so you go for it.
Well, I have the first one pulled up. With Disney animated films being made into live action films these days, are there any films you would like to see in an animated form? From Greg.
I want to see an animated Mad Max. That would be awesome. I think that would work really well in like a really over the top like anime, Japanese anime kind of style.
Yeah, I think something like that, but like doing the reverse for like Inception, because obviously it was inspired by anime, and then putting Inception back into an anime would be amazing. Yeah. Either that or or like The Godfather done by Disney be amazing.
I think some people have come as far as like it's amazing that like Disney have never done like a version of like Dracula or Phantom of the Opera, you know, because those kind of old kind of gothic tales would kind of fit if you did like a Beauty and the Beast like a Disney Renaissance type thing with one of those stories. That would be kind of interesting.
I mean, you have the Night on Bald Mountain section from Fantasia. Yeah. That's probably about as close as they've gotten. And then you do have moments in Disney movies where you go, "This is actually terrifying." Somebody put up a question of what's the scariest thing in a Disney movie earlier on Twitter today. And although it's Pixar, I would say not Bambi. I would say, even though it's Pixar, the swordfish opening from Finding Nemo. Like, seeing that as like a 5-6-year-old is scarring. Like, it is just terrifying completely. So it's like Disney've never gone full horror, but now they own Fox. So the Alien Queen is a Disney princess.
I would say the evil queen transforming into the hag and Snow White is full horror. I would say.
Yeah. Although actually no, that's what I'd pay to see. Disney doing Alien.
I'd really like to see, and I'm glad y'all talked, so I had a chance to think of one. John Wick would be fun because it's already such an expressive film visually, and I really am thinking here, like I'm assuming for all of us, Disney animation. I'm thinking at least the older style and not the current 3D generated version, which I don't find as artistically interesting.
That's Apple, so it explains it.
Yeah, like so I like the movie Frozen. I've seen it many times, but you compare it to Beauty, like literally anything before they switched to that. Like the style is so different. John Wick with the same colors in the background. You could really get crazy with the animation.
In terms of animation on that, what movie specifically would you have done by Aardman? Like, for a stop motion kind of. And I notice we've all gone like really violent stuff, but we haven't gone like, oh, you know, we take Four Weddings and a Funeral as done by Disney.
Yeah, I think
My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah. I think anything kind of social realist might work quite well as an Aardman.
Actually, I was going to get to this later, but Lotte Reiniger, she worked on the La Grande Illusion from Renoir. So yeah, I think really like any of those really weird like old French movies could work as animation because they were live action animated.
Yeah, but like Sylvain Chomet, who did Belleville Rendezvous, he did a film called The Illusionist, which was basically a new Jacques Tati. It was made by it was an unproduced Jacques Tati script that he turned into animation and had this animated likeness of Jacques Tati kind of basically in it, playing this loser magician working his way around Scotland. I quite the idea of like unrealized kind of projects, kind of not really kind of you're not going to put down the money for for like the full live action production, so just do it as like an animated short or something. That's quite a nice way to kind of test out your ideas and just have a version of that kind of vision out there.
That made me think Jodorowsky's Dune. Just turned that into an animated movie.
Jodorowsky's Dune, but get it made as stop motion by Tim Burton. See what happens.
Well, and I also think that we all went the adult route because usually animation is aimed at children. It's not excessively violent. You kind of have to go seek out adult animation because
you have
it's
to go
not
to like Akira and that kind of stuff. The madness.
Yeah, or South Park. Yeah, that's not movie, but
I thought you'd gone.
Yeah, you have to go you have to watch Cartoon Network after 10 p.m. Something like that. So I'm always much more interested in seeing something targeted at me than targeted at family or wider audience or however you want to describe movies that are kids' movies.
And I remember actually thinking of it. I haven't seen the film of Coraline, but I remember reading the book and the introduction when the Coraline first came out. The kind of the reviews for in the papers are like, this is a scary story for children, as if the two don't mix. And Neil Gaiman was like, yeah, that works. Like, kids love scary stuff. Like, they automatically go for it, and it's healthy at a certain point to have the slightly spooky stuff, and stuff like Coraline is terrifying.
Yeah, and I know we always end up kind of bringing it up, Kieran, but for Brits especially, Doctor Who, kids' favourite episodes of Doctor Who are always the really scary ones. They're always,
And I give you this, Sam might remember this. Jacob won't. This is not a film. This is in a kids' TV show, Teletubbies. If you remember the Lion and the Bear,
we had Teletubbies here. What are you talking about?
Did you have but did you have the Lion and the Bear section that was in one or two episodes? Go look it up. It's big, like there's a Lion and the Bear, and it's like mechanical stuff. It's not exactly stop motion, but it's kind of puppetry in a way, and it's done complete with horror movie kind of like ideas. And it's so much so that eventually the episodes got banned in like 20 odd countries across the world because it was just pure nightmare fuel. Like, it's some of the stuff is so weird that gets into like kids shows and stuff like that. And again, we'll probably mention that with Disney, as we've mentioned before with Snow White. Like, how is this allowed at a certain point? It's not right.
Next question from James. What has been the biggest breakthrough in animation since its early days? And I'm going to steal the easy answer. Toy Story being the 3D animated feature. I'm pretty sure it was the first, but I'm not 100%.
3D animated, About the decade before that, you had the first computer animated feature, which was Rescuers Down Under. That was the first animation made entirely on a computer.
That's cool.
And
even it's sort of done in like a 2D style, though, but it was done on the computer.
I mean, it even got things like Tron as well in '86, which was the first one to have kind of like a world completely CGI in that sense. And you know what? I think we knew CGI was getting well when we moved away from like 80s cheesy lightning effects. You know the ones I mean? Something like Hellraiser.
Rotoscoping. Once you stop rotoscoping, and it looks so much smoother.
Damn you, Dire Straits.
Basically, those like early films, like, we can't really draw convincing people, so we're just going to trace over footage, and it'll do.
Yeah. Oh, I guess rotoscoping could go under this too. Like that is an advancement in animation within live action film. But
the best the best and probably only really for me good use of rotoscoping I've seen was for the film adaptation of A Scanner Darkly, because Rich latest version of that, because that's meant to be a weird, very trippy movie. It's meant to make you feel a bit kind of queasy to watch, and that completely has that effect. It feels like you're on a bad trip basically with that.
And I mean, are we going to go technical to finish this one off? Anyway, film is animation. It's picture. It's essentially just a massive flip that you shine light through onto a screen.
The question is, since the early days, though. So,
I mean, I would say either kind of, if we consider them as different mediums or different versions of the medium, live action film versus animated film. I think probably one of the biggest innovations was mid-20th century when you were able to combine one with the other. It's so convincing. I mean, obviously there are early versions of it, but like really convincingly, like with films like Mary Poppins and obviously Roger Rabbit later on. As soon as you can blend those worlds together, it kind of. I think it does kind of change the game completely.
Godzilla '98.
and as much as I will rip the ever-loving hell into Disney for just being the monopolizing, sweatshop running corporation that it is, it has been at the forefront of shoving animation through its paces. So I'm not going to deny that it has been putting major advancement through, or if not inventing them, putting them at the forefront and showing what can be done and popularizing these advancements, if not completely creating them.
Yeah. All right. Next question is, what happened when America changed styles? I'm guessing from Prince of Egypt and Treasure Planet. Oh, no. Yeah, to Prince of Egypt and Treasure Planet for a few years and then just stopped. Yeah. So that style of animation and changing it.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had a few years of like the early kind of 3D computer animation, and then a bit of a reversion back to kind of the traditional for a few years, and then it just carried on. We basically haven't seen much traditional animation since that. It's all pretty much been kind of CG. I mean, in terms of like what happens like to get them onto CG, in the first place, obviously you think of Toy Story, you think of Shrek. I like especially, that was like proving it was like, okay, yeah, this is the new way of doing it. This is now the new default. I mean, Prince of Egypt's an interesting one. That was
DreamWorks?
Was that DreamWorks? Yeah. So, and then you had something with the Iron Giant for Warner Brothers.
Iron Giant is incredibly underrated and an amazing film. I watched. I knew of it for ages and finally got to watch it last year, maybe the year before, and I was like, oh my god, this is one of those ones that genuinely is bordering on perfect. Like, how have we done this?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Was it just purely like money? Was it just the new shiny toys were bringing in more audiences? Like doing better at box offices, or was the traditional way of doing things too time-consuming and labor-intensive?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Prince of Egypt, as far as I know, is that essentially the people making it were good friends with people like Spielberg. So essentially, Spielberg wrote in absolutely everyone he could get to shove it in and make it absolute extravaganza, and then Shrek it. And Shrek was not expected to be great. I think people got shoved on that. Like, if you didn't do well on other projects, you went to work on Shrek. Like, that's the kind of thing it was, and somehow it worked. So DreamWorks did a thing essentially for a while, and then probably when like Shrek did so well, I would say for DreamWorks they jumped on that. Obviously, they had the bit in the middle when Aardman were with DreamWorks, and they did Flushed Away and Where Rabbit.
I mean, from Turn of Millennium onwards, I forget this was like quite a difficult decade for Disney. They were losing their identity and having fewer and fewer kind of home runs, basically. They're trying loads of different things just to stay relevant, basically, but not many of them really kind of bore much fruit. I mean, unless you count, I suppose, Lilo and Stitch did all right, and towards the end of the decade, you had Princess and the Frog. They were like the two big kind of actual successful kind of traditional animated films of that decade. But otherwise,
It was Pixar mainly running it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really. Yeah.
That's really like when I think about what happened. Why is this the case? Like, yeah, it's Pixar, the transition to 3D mainstream, but also, like those like at Treasure Planet, I think about those weird, like y'all talked about some or combining like the 3D and 2D, which is it's awkward. Like I don't ever like the look of that. Pokemon the movie 2000 had that too. Like it's a transitory period, so like things are gonna be weird, moving from one to the other. I guess it's its own form of like medium negotiation. So
and that was done like since the 90s, since Beauty and the Beast, for the ballroom scene. That was a computer animated sets with like
I did not know that
animation on top of it basically, and they experimented with that more and more as the Renaissance went on. But they still, even a decade after that, hadn't quite got it right. And yes, as you say, it's slightly jarring to kind of see.
And I mean, even in start the bingo going. Even in Miyazaki's Spirited Away, that's the first time he's using on occasion bits of 3D animation. So when they're running through Haku and Chihiro running through all the flowers, you get 3D. And near the start, you've got the kind of totem, whatever they drive past, that's in 3D, and he's seeing what he can do with that as well.
I mean, why did the States not bother with much hand-drawn animation around this time? Because it was Japan. You couldn't do better than what they're doing in Japan, maybe.
Yeah,
it's a lot
America
of work
decided
too.
We'll keep the 3D Pixar and DreamWorks going, and Japan can have the hand-drawn animation, and that's about where we'll live.
And like Studio Ghibli are so associated with that style that their one computer animated film so far was their biggest critical and commercial flop to date. Earwig and the Witch. It looks like. I saw a review, might be an Empire, I think, describing it as like looking worse than a toilet duck ad. I mean, I think Kieran will know what that means. But yeah, there's this toilet cleaner in the UK, and there's this really badly animated CG duck in the adverts. It's
not good.
It wasn't good. No.
It's incredible how like really bad commercials can have animation. That's how far we've come. It's relatively cheap now. And then last question from Liam: what animation styles do you favor? And I think we've touched on it a little bit, but 2D for me.
Yeah, my first love is probably 2D animation. I mean, my favorite era of Disney is probably the 60s. Where they were doing it kind of. It looks a bit more rough and ready. They're doing it quickly, but there's just so much expression in it. Things like the Jungle Book and Sword and the Stone and things like that. I love that kind of. That kind of hyperkinetic, kind of sketchy style, but I also love stop motion just because of the care and the attention required, and this sheer amount of time and concentration. It's just you can literally see the blood, sweat, and tears in that art form.
101 Dalmatians is really rough too. That's what I remember from it.
Yeah,
and not RUFF.
Really
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, before I got into movies, as I think a lot of people did, watching Saturday cartoons and Scooby Doo and, and Tom and Jerry and things like that. And Tom and Jerry is ridiculously well done, and Looney Tunes and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, on my 10 best films list for the film magazine that we all did, I got two animations. One of them was Spirited Away, and one of them was The Wrong Trousers, Wallace and Gromit. So. And I still to this day think Wrong Trousers is one of the best movies ever made, and Ardent will never top it.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. I mean, I had one animation on my top 10 as well, but it was the Spider-Verse. And to be honest, if it has to be a CG animated film these days, at least the ones that are doing something a bit different with the medium, that are trying to evoke the look and feel of a comic or something like that, or changing like the color timings or the frame rates, different characters move in the same scene, to evoke their kind of personalities. It's just something interesting.
Del Toro did Pinocchio as well, and the traditional stuff isn't dead. You just don't see it as much, and when it is, it goes immediately into best animated feature, because for 30 years we haven't had them decide that actually an animated film is like a best picture. possibility because snobbery.
Well, we've
Yeah.
had two ever, haven't we? We had Beauty and the Beast in the 90s and Toy Story 3 whenever that was released. They're the only two.
Oh,
I
yeah, I
think.
forgot about that.
2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
let's be honest, I think they did for the last sort of like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you guys are bigger animation fans than me. I'll watch them, but I don't care. If they stop making animated films today, I wouldn't be bothered one bit. So, you know,
I was a partial anime dweeb in high school, so like,
yeah,
I kind of blame that.
Animated TV is more my thing. Like I like Aqua Teen Hunger Force and all that jazz.
Well, I mean, occasionally, I mean, I don't use Letterboxd. I have my own kind of documents and system so that I can give different categories and highlight to track it. And one of the categories I've given myself over the past few years is animated. So, like, thankfully, after today, I'm now on like 5 this year, or maybe 4, because it's one of those things, a bit like things like female directors and silent cinema and stuff like that. I go,
my favorite
it is a
genres.
thing. You know, it's just like, or categories or kind of aspects or films not in foreign language, essentially to force myself to make sure that I don't just watch American black and white movies from the 60s, really bad Roger Corman sci-fi movies.
But Letterboxd gives you so many handy, like, pre-curated lists, you know, to dick films.
I don't give a damn. Like, I tried using Letterboxd, and it's like it just takes up space on my phone when I do my own way of doing it anyway. So it just
just for information, I've of the Letterboxd top 100 animated films, I've seen 61 of them.
Nice. Kieran, is your thing handwritten or like in an Excel file or?
No, it's just a Word document.
Okay.
I have handwritten lists of stuff I need to watch and read and stuff anyway. That specific one is a Word document. It's so that I can track it and I know when I've got to 100 for this year and go, oh, there we go, I've got it all there. And again, it means that I then track kind of every time I watch one that was released this year, I put a number, you know, I add to a number and keep running tallies of different things, just as my own way of making sure that, again, I don't just watch like Hollywood blockbusters and go, yes, I'm a film fan. It's like, you know, everything's just Marvel movies, like, you know, 300 times over. And it's like, that's not really kind of thing. And occasionally I'll go, I should probably try and actually get out of my comfort zone a bit. And it's just really easy for me to see personally.
Yeah. I mean, like with a lot of things in life, you've just got to have a balanced diet of your movies, haven't you? You know, a bit of everything.
What is it unfair to classify anime or animated as its own genre rather than including them into whenever we categorize film, animation is usually a category along with horror or something, and I feel like it's necessary in a sense, but
you can have animated horrors, you can have gangster horrors, you can have adventure. You can have all those within animation, you know, you can and hybrid kind of genres within animation. So, you know, you have like an animated horror film, but not just animation as a genre film, I'd say.
I was going to say, yeah, and with my list of things, it shouldn't be a genre. It should just be normal film, but I don't include it enough. So I use that as a kind of reminder. Almost.
Yeah, is it unfair that live action is sort of the default? Because they really did grow in the same time. Like, it's not like we only did live action and I mean,
I think just considering how far back animation goes, like forms of like primitive animation, you know, it deserves its place, you know, alongside any other kind of filmmaking, I'd suggest.
I was going to say, we had flip books long before we had photo cameras. So, you know, and painting and tapestries. So, you know, even a tapestry, you kind of look here and then you look again, the pictures change, and that's a form of animation, I guess. So, and as I said earlier, essentially, film is just a photo flip book that you shine a light through.
Yeah. Well, and moving into the film that I'm watching or watched, The Adventures of Prince Achmed. The original story is Ahmed and the Parabura, whatever it is.
Part of the Arabian Nights.
Yeah, it's part of Arabian Nights. The movie, it combines that story and Aladdin into one story, just to kind of simplify it, I guess. So, I mean, this is pre-Disney. This is the sort of the OG film Aladdin, I guess, in animation terms. I'm sure there was a live-action version.
Yeah, I mean, there were several versions of Thief of Baghdad, weren't there? I'm not sure where this kind of comes in chronology. There was one in the 20s and then one in the 40s.
Yeah, this is 26.
Yeah, but talking on, the early forms of animation, there were, after flip books, the Zoetrope, or one that I found was Emile Renault's, what's the word? Praxinoscope, which I love that old-timey movie devices always have hilarious names. It had mirrors that reflected images and strips set inside the drum, and the instant that each mirror faced the viewer, it reflected the image into the eye.
Yeah, it's a bit... So the Zoetrope, which I think, strangely enough, people will be familiar with the trailer for The Conjuring, because it's in that. And, it's the thing that you spin and you look through the slot and then something pops out at you from the other side. Essentially, how that works is you peer through a slot and you see a picture going around, and you look all the way through like a drum to the other side of the carousel. The Praxinoscope has mirrors on like a central island that reflects what you're kind of looking behind. So you look at the mirror and see what's on the outside of the drum as it goes around. Rather than looking at it, you see the reflection from the middle. I was aware of it and couldn't remember what it was called. So I didn't know Praxinoscope.
Yeah, and so there is this really complex question of what is the first animated film. It's impossible to say, because let's say feature, still impossible to say, because there's so many movies that didn't survive. The perhaps reporting of their existence didn't survive, but generally Prince Achmed is called the oldest or first surviving animated film. So if you want to see kind of what that looked like, watch this movie. It was...
and that's oldest surviving feature length.
Yeah.
We should qualify that.
Yeah, it was shot in 24 frames per second, which she had to actually specify, because in 1926 people didn't really know how anything worked. So she was like, people thought it was strange. I guess just regular people, because movie people would know that. But she invented either a predecessor to or a multi-plane camera, however you want to look at it. So basically, there's layers of glass that has different portions of drawings in this case, or paper or whatever, and you could slide it around. And whenever I first learned about that, I watched Bambi, because that was... is it the first Disney one that used their multiplane camera, or a new version?
I think they used a multiplane for Snow White, so they were doing it throughout the 30s. Maybe Bambi's where they kind of properly got it perfected.
Yeah,
but they were experimenting with it throughout the 30s.
Yeah, it creates the illusion of movement, making it way easier. You don't have to animate the figures every time.
Yeah, I think the equivalent, if people are familiar with it, when you get the kind of the fun fairs where you open it up and it's the things where it's almost like a ship on the waves, and you've got several layers of the waves that go past. Yeah, imagine all of those are on a sheet of glass, and then you can just slide the glass and shoot the camera down through it, and so each of it is building up like that. Is probably the way I'd think of it.
Yeah, she wrote about the movie in I don't know what this is a forward to. This document is from BFI, who restored the film. But she says, by the way, she talks about there being so many frames to make this up. I think I read 200,000 frames in total.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so she says it may be left to the algebraic abilities of the reader to figure out how many frames would be necessary for an opus of 1 hour in length. But this was not the only reason for the length of the period it required to make this film, which was 3 years. At this time, animation was still in its infant shoes. There was no Mickey Mouse yet. We had to experiment to try out all sorts of inventions to make the story come alive. One of the earlier feature-length animated films I read about is from Argentina, And so, like, she's making this in Germany. Lotte Reniger is, her and her husband and a couple of other really prolific collaborators are all working together on this, but she's the director of it. So if you want to go to early female-directed film, I mean, this is a great example.
It is.
Yeah, and they... Oh, here are the other people. Walter Rootman, Bertold Bartosch, Alexander Carden, and Walter Turk. And I'm sure I butchered all of those because they're German. But yeah, they took the story of Prince Ahmed and Aladdin, pushed them together, and I think really the reason she's the director is because she pushed the animation style used. She talked about whenever she was a little kid, she cut out these silhouette figures with scissors. And she said she did that. She painted, she did, photography, whatever. And the thing people were most impressed by were her cutouts. And so when she liked theater too. That was the other thing. Inspired a lot of her work. She actually made operas later in her life. But sort of where that's where all of her artistic inspiration is coming from. That's her distinct style, which she would use over the course of her filmmaking career. And in it, you can also see like the German expressionist influence. There's a lot of really strong shape. There has to be, because it's an animated film in silhouette with like the color filter background. So the red, blue, yellow, whatever. And all of the figures, they're black. They have little space maybe in the eye or something like that, that the background comes through. And one thing that I read about was in the animation of that period that did exist, there was a lot of focus on the facial expressions in order to convey emotion and stuff like that. In Prince Achmed, one of the reasons it is groundbreaking is it uses body motion and movement to express, because the face isn't really there. So each character has to have a very distinct profile look to them so that you're not getting people confused. And this is 1926 Germany, but for lack of a better term, I'm going to call him Jafar. The Jafar character, who is the African sorcerer, is what he's called in the English translation. And in the German, he's called something like that because it's Afrikaans something. I got to learn a little bit of German doing this because the whole thing is in German and there's just subtitles at the bottom if you're lucky, and get a copy that has them. I watched mine on Criterion Channel, so I was fortunate that they had it. But yeah, so the Jafar character, he looks Jewish. Like it looks like Nazi propaganda of a Jewish person, because he has the giant hook nose and a big, long, creepy beard. And so he's African, but I don't even think he looks like the North African stereotype. He just kind of looks Jewish. Maybe the Jewish diaspora in that time was focused in Northern Africa. I don't know. They were all over the place. But yeah, that stood out. 1920s. She wasn't a Nazi. She actually fled in the 1930s. But yeah, that kind of stood out. But there does have to be a little bit of like racialization, because the movie moves from maybe North Africa. I'm not sure exactly where they are. There's a caliph. So maybe it's in like Turkey. Maybe it's somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know exactly where. But it goes from there to China to fantasy lands. It's called like Wak Wak, and it's featured a lot in Arabian folklore. And there's it's a demon island. There's a lot of demons there. And so, it moves all over the place. And kind of the story is Prince Achmed. Well, the sorcerer, it starts on him, Jafar, and his creepy look. And, he's very angular at all times, very pointy, because he's the bad guy. He shows up to the caliph's special day. I don't remember what it was, but there's these really cool parade sections. Another thing I wondered is if because they have a lot of forward movement to to the left side from the right, if that was inspired by like the way Arabic is written. And as a left-handed person, I wish English was right to left, but whatever. But yeah, that kind of
your fault.
Yeah, there is left to right movement for forward, but it struck me how much of it is right to left. And so he shows up with this magic horse to the Caliph's special day, and he's like, "Ooh, I have this special horse that can fly." And they're like, "Oh, all right. How much gold?" And he said, "None. I'm going to steal your daughter." And then Prince Achmed goes, "Let me see that horse." And then he pulls the lever on the top. Or the bad guy does. I don't know. One of them does. And the horse flies into the stratosphere because he doesn't know what the down button is. And the Caliph's like, "What? How does he get down?" He pushes the lever on the back. Well, does he know that? Except it's in German. And he's like, I don't know. We'll find out. Prince Achmed, we get to watch him like figure it out, which is a really interesting part. You know, he's just sitting on the horse, but he's like pulling different things to try and get it to move. And he turns around and goes, "Oh," and he pushes that. It goes to the ground. He ends up in Wak Wak, and the princess, gosh, what is her name?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, it is
the princess.
Sure. Well, I'm going to at least say it once. Peri Banu, that's it. Which it's two words in this movie. In the folklore, it's one word. So who knows how they translated that? Peri Banu, she's a fairy in the original story. In this, she just seems like a lady. She rules over the demon land. She has like feathers. She gets into a bath with some of her handmaidens, and so there is nudity in this film. You just kind of see the vague outline of curves, and Prince Achmed is watching them like a creep from underneath like a curved fern. And Achmed, he wears a very distinct turban. That's how we know it's him. And then he has like he has a normal nose, you know, like it's kind of it's pronounced in the sense that like the racial stereotype of like a Middle Eastern person would be slightly larger nose, but it's very rounded and proportional compared to the evil sorcerer. And so he says, "Hey, I want to marry you." She's like, "All right, let's get on your magic horse." And they fly to China. Why China? I don't know why China. Apparently, China was a stand-in for an exotic land in maybe the sort of 1800s translations that the story of Aladdin comes from. I don't. Maybe it's in the original folklore too. I'm not sure.
I was going to say, I haven't read the Arabian Nights, but let's be honest, it got translated in the 1800s. Making this in 1920, you can be the most liberal person in 1920. There's going to be some stereotypes that still filter in. This is just how it works. You know?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. Is that first there's this part where, like, she's under this tree, and I think it's just beautifully framed, like her sitting under the tree and him standing by her. It's a great shot. He runs off to like do something, and the sorcerer shows up. He was a bat. He escaped prison. He had been locked up, and then he turns into a kangaroo, which is a weird crossover. I checked to see if there's any associations of kangaroos with evil. I couldn't find any. The only thing that I know of, there's a movie called Miracle Man, which is actually 3 episodes of a TV show about Jesus in the modern age that was never made, but they made it into a movie. There's a kangaroo in hell in that movie. So maybe that's referencing this. I don't know. But yeah, he's an evil kangaroo, and he takes the princess on the flying horse, and he takes her to sell her to the Emperor of China, who is very much a stereotype. He has a very distinctive headdress. That's how we know it's him. And he also, this is amazing, has a little mini-me gay lover. And so the movie was censored. It had originally had like a kiss between them, which she called the first gay scene in film. Who knows if that's true? Probably not. There was probably another censored gay thing or uncensored that was shown somewhere, but it is not in the existing film that I have a copy of. By the way, it was restored from a nitrate, negative that was in London. That's how they made it. So it would have been censored there, surely, since, Turing was put to death in the 40s. So, there's no way they let a gay scene be in the movie. But he is called the Emperor's favorite, and he doesn't really play into the movie at all. But the reason she put it in there was she said a lot of her theater friends who were gay were persecuted socially, and she wasn't cool with that, so she wanted to kind of expose people to homosexuality with her film.
And in that period, I think Germany was one of the more liberal of European nations in terms of be able to be out in terms of sexuality stuff. Berlin especially was like a bit of a utopia, for just you go there to be who you want to be, pre-Nazis, it was quite a
That was part of
that
was part of the social whatever that they were fighting against. Degeneracy. And so I'm not saying that, they said that. And so so he sells her to the Emperor of China for money. He has giant bags of gold. And then he just kind of leaves the movie, and Prince Achmed has to the sorcerer takes him to this really cool red area, and it's like an evil mountain or something. It looks awesome, and this whole movie with the color filters, the old 1920s style, makes me think of the really expressive color, and my brain jumped to Aladdin, obviously, but there's so many cool scenes in that movie in terms of the sky and the way that they color and light the scenes. It's drawn from this kind of animation. It looks amazing. And
obviously, just checking the wiki, because it's been a while since I've seen the Disney version of Aladdin, there is a Prince Achmed in the Disney version of Aladdin, which is a homage to this one.
Yeah, he has the little thin French mustache. He looks weird. But yeah, so he takes him to a mountain, and then the Witch of Flaming Mountain shows up. Look, it starts kind of falling apart here in terms of sense, but it's entertaining.
And on this episode of Jacob Tries to Remember a Film Plot.
Yeah, and this is it's just a series of vignettes. It's Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. It's not disconnected stories, but it's old timey, serialized little stories that were in a book put into a movie. And so the witch of...
I mean, the whole point of Arabian Nights is that essentially it was a story that she just kept adding to. So that's kind of par for the course,
Yeah, it does seem like they're making it up as it goes along, even though it kind of already existed. But yeah, the Witch of Flaming Mountain rescues him, and apparently the sorcerer is her arch enemy. That's what Wiki says. I forgot that. I didn't notice her saying that. But yeah, Achmed goes and he saves the princess, and then he's like, well, we gotta go to Wak Wak for some reason, and the only way we can open Wak Wak is with Aladdin's, this is the only German thing I remember, Wunderlamp, or magic lamp. And so he goes to find Aladdin. He finds it very easily. He just flies up to him and goes, hello, Aladdin. Where is your Wunderlamp? And Aladdin says, well...
Robin Williams has it that way.
Yeah. Aladdin says, well, in order to tell you that, I must first tell you this story. And so he tells the story of Aladdin in flashback, where he climbs into the cave, and then the sorcerer is like, give me that lamp. And he says, no. And then he has the genie, and he builds a palace for his princess girlfriend, and he becomes rich. And then the sorcerer shows up and disappears the palace, sends it away to who knows where, and then maybe it's Wak Wak. I don't remember. And
the demons get it.
Yes.
Evil kangaroo.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The evil kangaroo. And so he's like, wow, cool story, Aladdin. So where is your Wunderlamp? And where is the Wunderlamp? Great question. Not stalling while I read through this really quick. Whatever. They find it. They find it at some point. Maybe it's in Wak Wak. I don't know. No, it's not, because they need it to open the gate. So they find it.
Genuinely watched the film, I swear.
Yeah, they find it somehow. They go to Wak Wak, and they're like, oh no, Achmed is at the gate. It's a bunch of demons, and they're very spiky. That's how you know they're demons. Some of them have horns. And so the evil demons, they fight against Achmed the way he kills things is really funny. He shoots an arrow and it's like so limp because it's, old style animation. It just kind of hits them and they go, and they fall. But they're exploding out of a mountain. They're exploding out of it like the episode of South Park about Scientology where the souls are just flying out of the volcano. It looks the same. And so they're fighting the demons, and then the Witch of the Mountain shows up, and she fights the sorcerer in a shapeshift battle, and you can tell which one is which due to the shape. She's much rounder. He's very pointy all the time, even though they're switching sides back and forth. Finally, they fly in like kind of a yin-yang circle as like a dragon and something else. I don't know. And then she vanquishes him, and the demons are all dead, and the palace is safe and transported back to China or wherever. Apparently, the original Aladdin takes place in China. I didn't know that. And yeah.
The palace moving back is great because they literally just got a cardboard cut out of a palace with a flat bottom and just kind of moved it across the screen. It's great. I love it so much.
It's fantastic. Whenever they're making the palace, it looks like it's made out of like the stars and stuff, which was cool. But then later it's just a palace. Another interesting thing about this is they actually acknowledge Islam throughout. So there's the Caliph. They talk about Allah. They say the Prophet at one point. So I appreciate that she was the crescent moon is everywhere. It's on top of Aladdin's palace. It's on the Caliph's army and stuff. And I get why Aladdin didn't talk about Islam, but it's kind of stupid.
In Disney's Aladdin, I've seen some of the Sultans saying "Praise Allah."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I do acknowledge it, but it's not like overt apart from that. So.
Yeah, that one came out in '92. If it was made 10 years later in 2002, he would not be saying "Praise Allah." I'm just gonna say that.
I don't know if it would have gotten made. Yeah, and so that's it. It's happily ever after. He has Peri Banu, who's just a human again. She's very tall, very lithe. She has creepy fingers. The Chinese emperor also has creepy fingers, but with very long nails. Like it feels like a racial stereotype. I don't know if Chinese people having long nails is a stereotype.
It's a bit Fu Manchu.
Yes, he also
actually
has the Fu Manchu.
1910s, I want to say, created, and then you get the series in like the 2030s.
Yeah,
I think
so it's possibly reference to that.
Yeah, and then the movie's over. I'm trying to put myself into like the shoes of a 1920 person, and I think that battle at the end would have been amazing to watch, and it unfolds like. I don't know why my brain went to this, but the finale of like Suicide Squad, where it's just hectic and way too big, even though the stakes of the story had kind of been small, or maybe should have been small. And then in terms of reception, so it was no theater would distribute it. And so she had an unofficial screening in Berlin. Finally, Renoir kind of picked it up and they screened it at where did they screen it? I don't know, somewhere in France, and it was a hit there, but it ran for 3 months there, then transferred to another theater where it ran for 6 months. It was shown in almost every country except for Germany, and then finally it was screened in Germany eventually, but it made like. The money wasn't important, but it was very well received by those who saw it, both in Germany and abroad for the unofficial screening. But it was also re-released at some point when it was restored by BFI, and it made like $100,000, which that's kind of impressive for a 1926 animated film being shown in like the 80s or whatever.
It's. I more than the film, I think just the animation style is gorgeous in every way. It's like you see just like a single thing anybody does like a version of it, and you know who the influence is. You know what I mean? It's just like that's a Lotte Reiniger thing, and the style is very much. And she did an adaptation of Cinderella, which is what I know from in 21. And some of the staircases there, people walking up the staircases. If you go and watch the Tim Burton's original short film Vincent, there's a shot of Vincent walking up the staircase, and it's all in black silhouette, and it's an obvious homage to the Reiniger thing. And looking up from Prince Achmed, apparently there was an episode of Steven Universe that was kind of inspired by it, which got nominated for Emmys and stuff, was, you know, spin-offs and stuff like that. So she's still being influential. She's still there in the background, and whenever we kind of think of animators, and especially kind of female animators, Lotte Reiniger is always one of those ones that will come up.
Yeah, and I'd recommend watching it, like, because I think it's on YouTube. I don't know if it has subtitles, but if you can find it, watch it, because it's entertaining. It's not bad. It does look good, like Kieran said. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to add that one to the list, because it's I've kind of known it by reputation, but never actually experienced it myself. So yeah, definitely got to do that.
Yeah, there are parts that obviously it's silent. It's 1926. There are some people that are going to go, "Oh, really?" But it's so distinctive and so different, just visually, that it's that almost it's now bad to say that it's a novelty value, for just a completely different style of visuals and creativity, to watch it for that almost more than the plot or the storyline or anything like that. Just visually, it's a beautiful piece of art, really.
Yeah. All right.
Cinema.
Kieran, are you ready to talk to us about Les Rats et leurs Sous?
Yeah, I'm not going to pronounce the French name because
I didn't either, to be fair.
Yeah, I haven't got a clue.
You're not going to mispronounce it.
No, I'm going to call it The King and the Mockingbird, although even that is hilarious. Because I picked this one because of the influence. Here we go. Second or third tick, I think it is.
Drinking game.
Yeah, the influence on Miyazaki and Ghibli, specifically the films of Paul Clément. I'm going to butcher French names, I apologize. And Miyazaki being on record as saying, let me get roughly the quote that I obviously now won't get, that essentially Miyazaki was, not only Miyazaki, but Isao Takahata were looking at it, and Miyazaki was influenced by the kind of the vertical space that is used, especially in this The King and the Mockingbird. And Takahata was looking at it for literature and things like that. And in one of the Miyazaki movies I haven't seen, is it Lupin 3? Castle of Cagliostro?
Castle of Cagliostro, yeah.
The castle is very much inspired by the castle in this. So so there's that, and there's it's just the sheer dedication, that and it being a great film anyway. It's based off mainly the Hans Christian Andersen story, the Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep. And Paul Clément was an animator who had set up his own little animation company in kind of the mid-30s. And then when the war hit, essentially all American films were banned, so they were pretty much the only animation studio in Europe. So they essentially got through that they were the ones essentially making all the propaganda films and the entertainment stuff, and that's what kept him in business. And then in the mid-40s, he teamed up with Jacques Prévert. I'm not going to say the name again because it'll be different every time. He'd done a film before. Is it called The Little Soldier? I want to say. And then they went to make this film, The King and the Mockingbird, based on the thing. So they got loads of people together, and they were making it for about 3 years. I think they started, I'm going to very badly look at Wiki to double check my very bad dates on this. I think it started in 47 or 48. And then about 3 years later, so around 1950, essentially, the money had dried up. So the production company pulled the plug. And they're like, what the hell are you doing now? So obviously all the rights to the film had gone to the production company, so Clément couldn't do anything about it. And then 2 years later in 1952, the company took, I think they'd got about 60 odd minutes of footage, maybe 65 round about there. And they cut it down to about 45, 48 minutes and released that version instead. And Clément was obviously up in arms about it. What the hell are you doing, butchering my film? You can't do this, blah blah blah. They were just like, okay. So they even added stuff like there's a character, the Mockingbird character at the beginning of the film. They added a section where he talks to the audience. This is what you're about to see in almost a Carl Laemmle kind of fashion at the start, and they added bits of that in. And they added an ending where it ends with kind of the shepherdess and the chimney sweep getting together. I'll go into the plot a little bit later. But essentially, so that comes out and people see it and they think it was a success anyway. Years go by. Mid to late 70s, about 76, 77, Guillermo finally gets the rights to his own film back. He gets all the footage and goes at it again. And he gets some of the original animators together. He writes new scenes in, and manages to get it so that in 1980 there is a kind of almost director's cut, complete with new footage, animated like 25, 30 years after they'd started it, to make the version that we now have, which is The King and the Mockingbird, because the original was released as, I think it was actually released as The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, but this one is now released as The King and the Mockingbird in 1980. And looking at it, it's, aside from one or two moments, a couple of moments, a lot of it is very hard to tell which is the new stuff and which is the old stuff. It's really beautifully done, and there are some. I think Disney probably got some bits influences from it because there's a kind of style there. But almost, if nothing else, for the sheer perseverance to 30 years later get the rights to your thing back and to finish it the way that you wanted to get it out is beautiful, if nothing else, and a testament to art. The film itself is kind of interesting, but kind of very fairy tale-esque, with some surrealist aspects. So there's some birds that talk and things like that, hence the Mockingbird, and there's a king who nobody likes and lives in a high castle. And there's two paintings in his castle. One's of a shepherdess and one's of a chimney sweep. And they are in love, and they come out of the paintings and they want to be together. But there is a painting of the king, and the king actually wants to marry the shepherdess. But because he's the king, he usurps the real king and takes the throne. And it starts this big police hunt for the two of them, and it runs all the way down the castle into the village and into the dungeons, and eventually captures the shepherdess, and the chimney sweeper's thrown in the lions. But the chimney sweep and the Mockingbird managed to rouse the lions and start like an almost like Metropolis style revolution that goes up and stops and kind of overthrows the king just as they're getting married. And at the end, it's weird. They bring this like massive like police robot which looks like the Iron Giant. Straight up looks like the Iron Giant, or the Iron Giant would look like this later. And they kind of, in the new version, they kind of destroy all the castle. Yeah. And the Mockingbird's almost got like a little bird like son kind of thing, and lets it free right at the end. Sam?
Yeah, I would think that knowing Brad Bird being a student of all forms of animation and working his way up through like the industry, I'm sure it was probably intentional if the Iron Giant looked like the robot in this. So,
yeah, I mean, you can look it up later. It's blue. The eyes are there. It's got a big kind of helmet, and it's big, and it's got claws that reach out and stuff. It looks exactly the same. Yeah. So I mean, there's interesting stuff in here. There's obviously the king lives at the top, the dungeons and the blind people live down the bottom. There's an obvious hierarchical kind of thing going on there, which the reason I know this is my animation teacher when I did it for an animation module at university. Compared this immediately to what we watch next week, which is Take Spirited Away, because of the thing with the bathhouse, all the lowly workers work at the bottom, you barber lives at the top. There's a reference there, and as we've said before, that they were very much inspired by this. There's also some really nice funny moments as well. There's a bit where the king falls into a load of water, and when he gets out, his hair's slicked over and his mustache goes into a pencil mustache. I wonder if this is a Hitler moment. So there's very much a kind of political allegory there, and even at one point where he turns around to the shepherdess and goes, "Don't worry, work makes people free." Strange that. Considering this is starting to make 47, 48. This seems very much like what they had over the camps. Strange. So you've got that in there, but then there's like weird surrealist moments as well. So people have said that a lot of the backgrounds is similar to who's the surrealist painter? Giorgio de
Dali?
Chicoro, is it?
Oh.
No. Giorgio de Chicoro, is it? Yeah, who if you look and see a lot of his paintings got this kind of like big kind of surrealist thing for all his arches going into the background and stuff like that. The main one, Piazza d'Italia, Three of a Kind, and I think these are also the same influences that went into. I'm thinking of the newest Macbeth. That is it. Ethan Cohen did that one. Tragedy in Macbeth. Joel Cohen. It's one of the two. I was going to be wrong either way, wasn't I? Kind of same influences there, some of the backgrounds and the way the set designed is. So it's really interesting that you've got all these surrealist kind of influences and all these kind of political allegories going into a rated U children's kind of family cartoon kind of thing. And that's like, you don't do this anymore. This is the stuff that doesn't happen. I say, and it was going on at the time. The animated version of Animal Farm was genuinely bankrolled by the American kind of like culture propaganda stuff, essentially, because they went, we can use this as kind of anti-communist propaganda. So they bankrolled the thing of Animal Farm. So let's not say that animated films are just for kids. In no way. They use straight up propaganda, and this feels almost like it. There's other stuff as well in there as well, but it's also just a gloriously like made film. And you've got the comedy moments, like there's a bit where the king in his throne gets really upset at somebody for doing something, and a little rod comes up like a dodgems or a bumper car as you know it, and hits the ceiling, and he kind of drives it off, and he occasionally press levers and like the square will appear in the floor and they'll drop down through and stuff like that. But it's really fun, and it's only in French with the kind of English subtitles now, the full version. And there's some stuff which people have argued doesn't add that much, but it's kind of just part of the strange, surrealist, weird atmosphere of it that's kind of mixing this kind of, once you know the political stuff is there, it's there. Yeah. But if you don't, it's still just a fun little kind of caper 80-minute through a kind of magical world where they set people free right at the end. And it was interesting that I think I heard somewhere that although kind of the main characters are technically the shepherdess and the chimney sweep, these two characters that kind of run along, even though the film is now called The King and the Mockingbird, the king and this kind of almost jester-like fool character who kind of helps our main couple escape and things like that, and occasionally spouts some nonsense about one of them asks, why is the world round? Because it's spinning. Why is it spinning? Because it's round. Has these kind of weird like 30s 40s things that you imagine like in something like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. They hit something, ooh yes, the world is spinning because it's round because it's spinning. Delightful insight. So you have this blend of everything, but with these two main characters, they're actually quite thin. They very much, there's no characterization to them. It's just, here's the damsel in distress, here's the one that wants her and is running away and gets helped. That's it. We kind of know nothing else about them, and it's interesting that that's kind of the point. That with kind of Disney animations, is very much on the romantic couple and the wedding right at the end, and this kind of isn't. And somebody pointed out that that's kind of shown by the fact that the original film ended with a kind of coming together of the two characters and like a little kiss on the cheek and hey, celebration, whereas the full version now ends with the whole place. They kind of run off, but then the castle gets destroyed by this big robot giant, and one of the little birds gets set free from its cage to fly off, and it's very much more a kind of liberating, kind of ambiguous, but a more subtle undertone, allegorical ending to it as well. So, I mean, it's a very interesting film in its own right, and I hadn't seen this in like six and a half years since I did it at university. But I'm so glad I watched it again because it's just a mishmash of everything, and even if you just watch it because the guy took over 30 years to get it made. And actually, apparently, when they had a screening, the premiere of this first full film that came out, there's the animator Paul Grimaud and the kind of writer Jacques Prévert, and they'd done a couple of other animations in kind of going into the 70s. But Jacques Prévert passed away whilst giving the final few lines for this new thing that he was making. And apparently, at the premiere, they say next to Grimaud, deliberately kept a seat empty in Prévert's honor. So, if nothing else, it is a testament to believing almost purely just in art for art's sake for 30 years and getting the rights back to your film that got snatched away from you like over 25 years later, and going, right, let's get everyone else back on the team, after 25 years, right, we're back on it, guys, let's remake it, and keep going. And if nothing else, it's a wonderful story on that front.
I do think the king, at least his head, it reminds me of Lord Farquaad, but less clean shaven.
Yeah, now that you said that, I can see it. Yeah. There's a Farquaad aspect to it as well. Yeah. It is very interesting. Let's see if we can get it on the cover.
That's what I thought of whenever you said he's kind of a jester character. I was like,
Well, the jester character is more the Mockingbird. He's kind of almost the king's fool. And I'm wondering if there's looks nothing like a Mockingbird, but I'm wondering if there's anything in kind of mocking in the name to take the Mickey out of and to criticize power in that sense. Boom.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Mockingbird is the Texas state bird, by the way.
Is it?
Yes.
That's
not just an eagle.
Well, we don't. That's America. Our specific one is Mockingbird here.
What even is a mockingbird? We don't get them over here.
It's a bird that
it's a
mimics...
sin to shoot. It's a sin to kill a mockingbird. I know that much.
Yeah.
Guess you had to suffer through that, GCSE.
It mimics the sounds of other birds. That's really all I know. I don't know why or how.
It's like a less vocal parrot.
Sure,
it's like parrots can actually do it. Mockingbirds try. No idea. This one can talk fluently and spouts esoteric words.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think ours can do that. By the way, real quick, Kieran, you mentioned that painter. His paintings are awesome, but that is one reason I prefer 2D. Is it is usually more like deferent to art and references it, whereas 3D is just it's focused so much on creating realism or mimicking it in animated style that I just can't get on board.
There is a weird thing now with these kind of 3D animations of how close do you get it to realism, and why would you want it to be real? If that's the case, just shoot it for real, and there is a weird thing of where the expressionism comes into animation.
Yeah, like the live action in big inverted commas, Lion King is
oh
just,
god, it's atrocious.
It's just a hyper real CG animation, isn't it? It's just it's so jarring. It's too real almost. And newsflash, guys, real looking lions can't emote.
Well, and not to
I wasn't as bothered at that. I was bothered by the fact that there was no reason for the film to exist because they didn't do anything new with the film. It was literally almost like a shot-for-shot remake, but worse. What? There's no point in this.
No, what really bothered me was when the big realistic-looking lion was supposed to look sad, and it just looked like a lion.
It's not that
they got that right at least.
Despicable Me isn't realistic, but it's so smooth and I think it's designed to look like a plastic toy that exists in the world or something. It's not human realism, but it's just too. I can't quite get the word for it. Pristine or something.
Too clean, almost.
Yeah. So from rated U to rated X. I'm going to be talking about Fritz the Cat. So this was the 1972 film from Ralph Bakshi, based on Joseph Crumb's underground comic book. It's basically it's an animated satire of
I was hoping
free
you were going to
love.
say a Shakespeare play.
It's a satire of
Probably
kind of
was.
free love, kind of hippie culture and race relations in 60s New York, basically. So Ralph Bakshi is an animator best known for the largely rotoscoped animated Lord of the Rings from the 70s, which, if anyone hasn't seen that, it's certainly a thing.
I think I've
I
seen
mean,
shots from it. I don't think I've seen it all the way
yeah,
through.
I mean, Pete Jackson's acknowledged he nicks some of the visuals wholesale from it. Like the basically how it deals with the ring wraiths, basically exactly how Pete
Yeah.
Jackson.
I was going to say, wasn't there the one shot there where they're hiding in the tree and then Asgore peers over? Isn't that shot pretty much just lifted straight from it?
That's straight from the Bakshi film, as is the one where the shot where they come into the inn, and attack
Yeah.
what they think is the hobbits in the beds. Yeah.
Didn't he launch like a lawsuit or two at Peter Jackson for nicking some of those shots? I think at some point.
Most likely, yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot of grief as Bakshi for various people for various reasons. But yeah, he's best known for that. But then he also did like a series of animation live action hybrid kind of dark social satires in the 70s and 80s. That all probably, I don't think it's too bold a claim to say, it probably greatly influenced Zemeckis from Roger Rabbit in terms of how he combines like the kind of the mediums and stuff like that. They're obviously very different tonally to something like Roger Rabbit. Fun facts: Bakshi really hated Disney and how commercial he was.
What's old is new again.
Yeah, and he's and I think he argued a few times. Basically, said the only reason he got away with like a lot of stuff he got away with in his animated films was because they were quite cheap by animation standards. So basically, the minor studios he did get to support his projects basically said, well, it's not a big loss if this doesn't make money, but most of them were actually big hits. So he did keep kind of bringing in kind of a fairly modest budget, and then they did really well, like in the same kind of theaters, that specialize in like exploitation films or black exploitation films, in the 70s especially. Kind of
no, you just saying very quickly. You're saying that he hated Disney. That makes him the perfect person to do the Lord of the Rings, because one of Tolkien's things was that essentially anyone can use it except Disney. Like Disney are not allowed, like in his dying wishes, to do anything with Lord of the Rings, like part of the estate. So that actually makes sense.
My funny aside was that I went to intercut those scenes with Travis Bickle in the movie theater with Fritz the Cat now, so that's what him and Sybil Shepherd are watching.
Yeah. I mean, apparently, Joseph Crumb really didn't like the final film. I mean, he actually fell out with Bakshi midway through production, just when he saw kind of the direction it was taking, and he just didn't agree with some of the creative decisions. He reckoned Bakshi didn't really get the point of his comic, and he was laying it in too heavily to like left-wing politics and making fun of them too much, But I would personally argue that the film probably more accurately makes fun of all sides. Really, it does a South Park things like you just offend everyone, and you almost don't offend anyone after that.
Monty Python do the same thing in like Life of Brian. They'll take a jab at kind of the Caesar characters, but also take a jab at kind of the left wing for having, the only thing they hate more than kind of the right wing kind of leaders is all the other parties fighting for the same cause that aren't them.
Yeah. And Bakshi also points out that Crumb actually got very rich off the film, so he didn't really have any right to complain. and he also quite bitterly added he didn't get very rich off the film because he was screwed over by his contract. Basically, he had a bad habit, Bakshi, of producers just kept undercutting him, and they got him in, got to do all the work, and then he really had to fight to get kind of compensation for that. Basically, he lost out a lot of money in his early films, especially. So the film opens with a very kind of stereotypical kind of hippie, Stone-sounding hippie kind of voiceover going, "Hey, yeah, the '60s, happy times, heavy times," and then we go into like these blue collar kind of animal workers. So it's basically it's a New York, a '60s New York, but like all the people in it are like anthropomorphized kind of animals. So you see these blue collar animal workers basically just having a normal conversation while having their lunch, break from their work, and they're kind of just talking about like home life and life in general. One interesting about this, it's kind of blends like documentary styles because you got all the voice actors playing the main characters, but any incidental dialogue throughout is basically it's almost like they just took some recording equipment out into New York in a cafe or something and just sat there and recorded random people's
It does
conversations.
sound like at one point I wondered if if they did just like go here improv this.
So I think literally this was just they just recorded some guys at a building site basically, and then animated as like dogs and pigs and stuff.
Have you seen Nick Park's earliest Creature Comforts?
Creature Comforts, yeah,
where he literally just animated over like extracts from just normal people having a conversation and just animated over it.
Yeah. They've started doing some new ones of those to promote the BBC. I think it's like iPlayer or something.
They have.
But yes, it's after these kind of these builders kind of having the conversation. One of them gets up and takes a piss off the side of the building they're working on, and the stream of piss turns into the title, Fritz the Cat. Cue funky theme tune. So yeah, we're straight in there, and Fritz, he's a bit of a try-hard. He thinks he's quite intellectual and kind of spiritual, but he's just an opportunist. Really, he'll swing whatever way.
I was going to say, I think what he thinks is he's kind of down on his luck, but really he's like the reincarnated spirit of Byron.
Yeah.
He should get all the ladies. He should be a poet, but he doesn't have the money.
He thinks he's bohemian, but really he's just a layabout, basically. So he picks up 3 like pretentious students in the park. First, he goes there with a couple of friends, kind of basically try and pick people up. He's trying to play guitar, but there's like so many like hippies trying to play guitar in this park. Basically, it's like you can't compete against them. But he comes out of some pretentious stuff and kind of. Like some kind of I don't know, like a philosopher or something, and he tempts them back to this house party. Where
the scene in Life of Brian where he's talking and they all start following him because they think he's the Messiah. It's essentially that, but he's actually trying to pick up the girls instead of like shooing them away.
So 10 minutes into the film, basically, he gets back to this hippie house party and proceeds to have a big orgy in the bathroom. Basically, 10 minutes into the film. So it starts off with him and these three girls in the bathtub, and then more people from the house kind of keep coming into the bathroom and just climbing in and getting involved. And things escalate from there. It's a drug-fueled kind of sex party, basically. And then the cops show up. The cops in this universe, of course, are pigs. And they bat down the door, and one of them gets involved in the orgy too, and while the other one's just more interested in beating everyone up. Fritz legs it and hides in a synagogue nearby, along with some questionable Orthodox Jewish stereotypes.
What are they played by, Sam? What animal are the Jewish stereotypes?
They're lions for some reason, but they've got like the big like Orthodox beards and like ringlets. So it's kind of I don't know if there's subtext to that or not. I'm not really.
I was going to say there's something about predators hiding at the top of like religion or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
I know Jesus is called the Lion of Judah, but he's not. He was Jewish, but it's like a Christian symbol. So
who knows? So the cops follow him there, and he legs it out of there. He ends up going to a crow bar, and that is not a crow bar as in a tool, a bar for crows. And in this universe, the crows are all basically this universe's version of African Americans. So it's taken that trope from Disney basically and running with it. So remember what they did in Dumbo and in it was Dumbo, wasn't it, with the insults and black stereotypes played by crows, I think. And
do they speak jive?
They do, yeah. Although one point up for Bakshir, at least he bothered to actually get black actors in to voice them. So, and he was actually very much. He grew up in I can't remember what neighborhood of New York it was now, but basically he was the only white Jewish kid in a very black area of New York, basically. So he grew up, with black people around, and had a lot of friends. And I think for a while he even went to the local segregated black school before the principal reported him, and he got escorted out by the police and forced to go to a white school. So I'm not exactly defending his kind of I'm not going to say that kind of racist stereotypes as such, but they are very much stereotypes and kind of exaggerated. But there's almost a point to it, because if he's insulting all sides, people, he's saying this is what New York thinks your black neighbours are going to be like. It's kind of almost exaggerating it for effect. He ends up in this bar and nearly gets into a fight when he's again basically being a bit of a pretentious guy. He talks about where's the quote now? Talks about being a cat, something to do with cats and birds.
He goes on, and he's because he's meant to be like somebody that thinks he's bohemian. There's constantly in the dialogue. There's stuff about them having like guilt complexes.
As a cat, my kind have always brought suffering on your kind. So cats, birds, white people, black people, basically. So it's not. It's about as subtle as a brick in the face, but it's.
What race are the pigs then? I don't...
Well,
police apparently are a separate race.
Yeah. I mean, one of them is because there's a pair of you see throughout the film. One of them's like this classic New York Irish cop, and the others, I think the others actually when they go to synagogue, he mentions he's Jewish. So So he says, as a cat, my kind have always brought suffering on your kind, and then one of the main crow says, "Oh, you got to be a crow to understand the race problems." And he nearly gets into a fight with the barman, and basically gets dragged out there by his new friends, and they go on a bit of a joyride across the city. At which point he gets very, very stoned and very horny, and nearly incites a race riot. He basically, all of a sudden, he decides that he's like the second coming, and that he can bring about peace throughout the world. And he's like proclaiming, it's like the end of the Joker, basically. He gets this crowd.
At this point, we are halfway through an 80-minute film.
Yeah. And then the police arrive, and of course, everything escalates, and lots of people get shot and beaten to death. And then the Air Force turn up for some reason and bomb out half the city because things just escalate. From there, he meets up with an old girlfriend who was a fox. Again, a very classic hippie. She looks a bit like. John Lennon's good. She was about Yoko Ono, basically.
So this is a precursor to Robin Hood in terms of furries, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, they're very anatomically correct. Let's put it that way.
Correct or incorrect? Anthropomorphic?
Yes. And correct for if you're into humans, not correct if you're into animals.
And half the time it's shown.
I'm glad we're considerate of the bestiality people in our audience. So basically he escapes from the city. She suggests he lies low, and they go off and start a new life across the country. They break down on the roadside in the middle of the desert because for some reason Fritz falls asleep, and he forgot that cars require petrol to run, so it just runs out of gas like midway through the desert. But he eventually falls in with like this kind of Manson-like Nazi reptile cults in the middle of the desert. They're all like snakes and lizards and things. Like where they're
going to start. They're going to continue the revolution, aren't they?
They're going to commit a whole lot of terrorism, and they solve. They kind of tempt Fritz into it. They give him more drugs, of course, and trick him into basically laying a bomb at like a power plant, I think,
They light the fuse and blow him up, I seem to recall.
They're like fuse, but yes, yeah. He's sort of come round and he's not going to do any of it, but the fuse is already coming towards him, and then he just sees it kind of going into the bomb, and he's like, "Oh damn!" and then it blows up. Amazingly, that doesn't kill him. So cuts to the hospital, and his super fans, the girls he was with earlier on, turn up at his bedside, and he's doing this very heartfelt, kind of seemingly like deathbed speech. And then it's just an excuse just to get him into bed with him again, and he's fine. They're bouncing around, ripping each other's clothes off, and that's Fritz the Cat.
So weird.
One of my favourite bits right at the beginning, it was because again, this bit about kind of making fun of all sides. That opening scene in the park where he's trying to impress the girls, but they're trying to impress this black guy, this crow, and impressing him by just reeling off all the base level kind of stuff. It's like that. It's like the scene from Get Out, with Brandon Whitford. Basically, it's like they're saying how much they like James Baldwin. They go to all the cool black parties and support the Black Panthers. It's like trying to tick all these boxes, and the guy just.
I took a race module as well. At school,
university, just. It's kind of fascinating.
And then he turns around. Doesn't he turn around and go, "Who do you think I am?"
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, bit of background for Fritz Cat. It cost $700,000 to make, and it made back around 90 million at the box office, which makes it, by some distance, the most profitable independent animated feature of all time.
90 million?
Yes.
Yep.
For that movie you just described?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was very popular in the porno theaters. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It was supposed after he was kicked out of. Again, I found a great interview with Bakshi kind of online, and he kind of on YouTube, and he kind of talks about like a few of his early struggles to try and get this made. So he went to Warner Brothers first, and he sort of.
This is the inspiration for Lola Bunny, I guess.
So he said Fritz was an underground comic book, maybe 25,000 sales. I go to Warner Brothers and sell them off a presentation. You're holding the book I'm holding the book in my hands, and they think you've got a property. They give me $250,000 to make it. Then I did the sequence in the junkyard. So that's the one where Fritz gets very stoned and very horny and goes on a bit of a sex romp. So I did this in junkyard. I wanted to show them what I was going to do. I didn't want to hide the fact that I was going to do the film this way. 20 minutes in, they kicked me out and fired me.
And I just very quickly gone online and done gone to usinflationcalculator.com, who reckoned that in 1972, 90 million is the equivalent of 668 million today.
That's more than Batman versus Superman and the Justice League maybe combined.
Put it this way, I don't think. Okay, admittedly we haven't finished it yet, but Dune Part 2 hasn't made that much money. So far this year, no film has made that much money.
Kieran,
so obviously we've got some time to go. Oh, Dune is still got another 30 million to rack up to equal Fritz the Cat.
Kieran, real quick, the acquisition of rights are not put into the film budget, are they? That's not incorporated. It's like a separate transaction in terms of budget.
It depends who's acquiring the rights.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he went for this. Bakshi went straight to Crumb, but Crumb was being really difficult. He was a really awkward dude, apparently, and he liked him when he met him and expressed interest and said, "Oh yeah, you can have my book," but he just gave him the runaround for months, refusing to sign an actual contract. In the end, his wife ended up signing the contract on his behalf because apparently she had powers.
So on that thing, very quickly, Jacob, if for example, a film production company is buying a script. You would put that into you'd put that in there, and when you buy the script, you buy the rights to the story that's in there, and usually that would be 1.5 to 1.5 to 2.5% of the total budget. So it would go into a total budget if you are somebody from Warner Brothers buying a script off somebody. If you're doing it in other way, then there'd be a slightly different workout.
I guess like when somebody buys the rights and then has them for like 10 years, and then they need to make something before they lapse. Maybe it's different.
There normally is something in the contract that when you sign an initial agreement, you have to do a certain amount by a certain date, otherwise the rights go back to you. So there are some book series like even I think some of the Darren Shan books, Skullduggery Pleasant, which I used to love and is still going, has been sold a number of times and come back because the project hasn't managed to get off the ground. It's just so that a studio doesn't keep hold of the rights for like 40 years and do nothing with it. Because quite often I think you sell it initially for a certain amount, and then once it goes a certain way, like the rest come in. So you'd essentially have like a holding thing, which works for the studio because it means if they don't make anything, they haven't spent that much money on it. And it's essentially like a deposit in a way. Anyway.
So after he was kicked out of the Warner Brothers office, he shopped around for a bit, and eventually film was picked up by Cinemation, who were famed for blaxploitation films in particular. The year before, they'd released Sweetback's Badass Song, and which is one of the best movie titles ever, mostly because it's got 4 S's in the badass. So.
It also has a sex scene within the first 10 minutes, but live action. So it's possibly why kind of Fritz ended up in those theaters, and kind of they've had it as part of the whole package, basically, and kind of picked up by that kind of cultural movement almost. By the way, Peebles says it, badass song.
Yeah.
Oh God, I just remembered there's an underage sex scene in the first 10 minutes too. Oh no.
There isn't in Fritz the Cat, thankfully.
Well, we don't know how old the students are, to be fair. So.
Well, they've not. Do we count all of their 9 lives like together, or?
Hey, only one of them is a cat.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm looking up Cinemation Industries somehow, and the total Wikipedia thing, I probably have a longer Wikipedia entry than these guys. But despite the fact that Fritz the Cat made 90 million at the box office for them, 4 years later they went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Like what were they doing with all this
cocaine?
Money? From the sound of it, their main exec was a bit of a dodgy guy. I mean, again, he did give Factory the runaround in terms of actually getting his paycheck after this. So, I think he was
like the last line of it is the company went bankrupt in late 1975, and all of its films had been distributed by other companies. Jerry Gross, who was the main producer, resurfaced after reportedly working as a clerk at a 7-Eleven a few years later with the Jerry Gross organization. Like, how do you go from producing an animated film that makes like nearly 100 times its budget to a few years later working at a 7-Eleven? This isn't being dodgy. This is being stupid at that point.
So, because this was only given the budget of $700,000, Bakshi kind of quickly realised that he couldn't really afford to kind of do full animation. It would probably have to be limited animation, a bit like you have in like a lot of the early kind of Hanna-Barbera kind of TV cartoons. We have a lot of still images, like just the odd moving limb or whatever. Just a lot of cheaper way of doing animation.
But he really didn't want to zoom in on.
Yeah, but he really don't want to do that. He wants to do kind of full kind of animation. And also, partly because for creative reasons, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to push himself to the best thing he possibly could, but also to give all the animators under him kind of some steady work for as long as possible. He eventually works out that that they could afford to basically draw it all, kind of all the things that it needs to do, just about. But it was the colouring that was the painting of the cells that would kind of, rack up the budget. So it works out that every cell in New York to paint every cell costs about $8. But if they went across the border to Mexico and made an animation company down there, they could do it for $1. So it was prepared to do that, but then the American Animation Union got involved and said, "Nope, can't do that. You can't paint cells outside the country. It's against our rules." And so they voted that he couldn't do that, and then he thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to kind of do my film the way I want to do it. So he went across to. So he got a no in New York, and then he went across to LA and appealed to the LA Cartoon Union and explained his situation. And at that time, the American animation kind of industry was on its ass. Basically, it was crumbling. Loads of people losing jobs. There weren't enough kind of projects, to go around to keep all these guys involved, unless you're working for Disney, essentially. But he kind of went to the union and kind of appealed his case and said, "Look, you represent these kind of this sector of the arts. I can keep these guys in work for a while. Are you really going to kind of split hairs over where I'm going for to color my cartoon?" And they basically said, "Yeah, okay, you raise good points. Yeah, we'll support you. You just bring your picture from New York over here to LA. We'll support you, and you can get it painted wherever you want." But when he arrived in LA, just down the road, of course, was Disney, and they didn't take too kindly to this pornographer, moving in next, just down the street, and bringing their industry into disrepute. They even did like an open letter, and in fact, a full page ad in I can't remember what magazine it was now. Probably Variety, I would imagine. I'd have to double check that. But yeah, they took out like a full page ad, basically kind of protesting, saying, don't let this this sicko kind of cartoonist come over here and ruin our reputation. But yeah, it didn't manage to stop him and his team moving in there. So they got the film made in LA. He said he only went out to LA reluctantly for budgetary reasons, but obviously doing so allowed him to actually get the film. Get the film fully made. I mean, there were some issues, and again, it's like budget, kind of cutting costs, cutting corners, I suppose. Trying to get it done as quickly as possible. There's for the desert scene towards the end. One of the cameramen realised that the cells for the desert scenes were not wide enough to actually cover the full screen. And it was really obvious terms like which bits of them were transparent, for animation purposes. So but actually, rather than kind of get to redo the full scene, he just painted a couple of cactuses on either side just to cover up the gaps.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, just making do amends. I already mentioned, he used, he had other actors in the main roles, but he kind of. He did record like natural sounds of taking audio equipment out to New York and just recording conversations and animating to those. There's a very distinct visual style to it because all the characters are fully animated and expressive and kind of well done and everything like that. The backgrounds though look very striking, but they're basically they're photos of like grungy areas of New York, kind of hand painted on top, basically, and kind of hand inks on top. So it's almost like rotoscoping, but with landscapes almost. It's like an interesting effect. And obviously, it does kind of lean into that kind of culture, obviously it's set in the '60s, but it's very much part of that kind of black exploitation kind of era movement in terms of like the vibe of it, the music, and some of the cultural touchstones and stuff. What you think about kind of the stereotyping of like various races and everything, it's up to you. I think you can almost, I don't know, is it you can get away with it more in animation? I'm not sure, but I think there is a point to it here because it's meant to be an exaggerated satire, and like I say, kind of criticizing all sides and kind of saying that no one's kind of completely right.
And I think there's also a certain point with it where you go, we've gone this far in. Let's just go the whole way. It's like we're in for power, but it's just
very controversial at the time because obviously at this point, you think of animation as a medium, think it's for kids, and then all of a sudden you get these animated animals screwing each other, and get shot in the head and stuff, and doing drugs. I mean, that was more of like, almost like an outcry at the time, obviously, for all the normal all the usual sources, of like any conservative views or kind of Christian fundamentalists and stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, so please think of the children. Well, children aren't going to see this. Where this is being played, they're not going to be in porno theaters, are they? At least I hope not. I would argue, I think Bakshi, especially coming up in the era he did, kind of that kind of counterculture, kind of anti-establishment kind of era, is probably more responsible than any other American animator for changing the view that kind of animation is kind of for kids, or just for kids. Exploring that you can use it as a medium to explore other issues, talk about adult subject matter. I mean, his other films that he did in the 70s, they're all very socially conscious, and they're about big themes and stuff, and about the world as it was at that point, in terms of like inequalities, and racism and stuff like that. And I would say in terms of like it being kind of crude and kind of sweary and kind of full of sex and violence and stuff, you would arguably wouldn't have had the boom in the 90s and beyond animation, like from The Simpsons to South Park, and I suppose Family Guy, especially like a decade after that. It's hard to see kind of how that stuff would have come about if he hadn't tried it out in this kind of area first. And it is interesting. The adult side of animation is still generally today can reserve for TV. Really, it's kind of, you don't see it in features that often. It's like apart from the odd thing like South Park movie and
occasionally anime goes for it. Things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and Satoshi Kon doing
Is
stuff.
this both of us trying not to name TV shows that have feature-length films?
Yeah, but I mean, but even Matt Groening said, why isn't there been another Simpsons movie? And he said, basically, if you got long-running kind of anime sitcom, how can you make a movie current? Because it takes so long to make. I mean, Bob's Burgers movie, took at least 3 years to make, and they're still late because of the pandemic. It's like, but generally, I suppose even in those cases, they're like feature film spin-offs of a TV show, aren't they? Generally, you don't get an adult animated comedy, satire, political statement out of the gate. I mean, kind of small kind of exceptions, like I don't know, other end scales like Waltz with Bashir. It's like it's more akin to like a war documentary, but done for animation, and like, but obviously very very adult, for that. It's so it's an interesting one. I knew it, obviously, but it was infamous. I knew my reputation. It had been mentioned in one of my modules at uni. It was on underground films, and Bakshi, I think, was very determinedly non-mainstream, and basically just he was prepared to just take the lower budget and kind of be creative with like what he was given, rather than he could have gone for bigger studio projects, but then I think his vision would be kind of limited, and they forced him to change. His vision, and maybe cut down on his kind of overt political statements. So he did go on to do in the 90s. He did some animation for kids, and it really was for kids this time. It was I think he possibly softened a bit with age. But I think one of the last he's still around, but he retires as an animator now. But one of the last things he was semi-involved with was Ren and Stimpy. He voiced a couple of characters on that, and I think he had some creative input on the writing stage, but he obviously didn't actually animate on it. But yeah, I think it's really interesting kind of cultural artifact. This, I don't think it's not a great movie, but it's definitely one I've seen. It's certainly a thing. And I'm thinking, okay, this is this is a weird one, but good weird. And
I'm gonna say whether you like it or not, you can't kind of doubt that it tried to do something, and you're definitely not going to forget it in a hurry.
Yeah. So this one I like for the birth of adult American adult animation, I suppose, and everything since has come from this. So yeah, just prefer to feel a little bit uncomfortable at seeing animal people having good times.
Well, or very comfortable if that's your thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it on animation, guys. But we will have another episode next week. Until then, where could people find you?
Before we go very quickly, Jacob, you said that there was something you wanted to ask us all.
Well, I was skipping it because I have to pee, but recommend really quickly an underrated.
That's your issue.
Recommend really quickly an underrated animated film. Mine is Loving Vincent. It was all painted. It's really cool.
Oh,
yeah.
I want to go see that in a minute.
Okay. My underseen animation is Mary and Max. It's a stop motion.
Good.
A stop motion film about two unlikely pen pals, and it's a real good exploration of depression and grief as well.
It is, and I'm gonna. It's not underrated, but I still think it's actually criminally underseen, especially by outside of Britain. I will say Wilson Grant with the Wrong Trousers, because it's still underseen, and still the train chase I think is the best chase scene ever put to screen in any medium ever.
Yeah, and you can read a longer version of what Kieran just said in his top 10 films. Yeah, but yeah, guys, where can people find you online?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where I have, what do I have? I have a 20th anniversary review of Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy. And there's a big monster list up there as well. I did a top 10 Godzilla monsters to celebrate the new Godzilla Kong film out last week. So check those out. And
I am Kate Judgmental across the various places. I've been on a bit of binge of getting stuff up recently, so I've done a retrospect for The Matrix. I got a review of Godzilla X Kong New Empire. Had a review of
You were too harsh.
I had we'll discuss this another time. Had a review of Psycho go up, and upcoming I will have retrospectives for Spellbound. I'm going to see the new Omen movie tomorrow, and there may be other bits and pieces.
I forgot the new Omen is the first Omen is out tomorrow.
Yeah. It's the new and the old one.
Yeah.
And the one never seen. It's got Bill Nye in it. Oh God, how did you get wound into this?
And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. Yeah, I mean I haven't written anything, but I have stuff written. You can go read that.
You run this. It's enough.
Yeah. I watched Hot Tub Time Machine 1 and 2 and was actually surprised by how much I liked it. So maybe revisit those or check them out if you like stupid comedies like that. I thought that its thoughts on time travel were actually interesting. So in terms of like cinema. So yeah, that is it. Go check out our Redbubble store in the description, or give us money through PayPal. We take both. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
That is.
Goodbye.
Sayonara.